Wake up, Jerusalem! Jupiter is here. So we are ahead of the game this morning, but maybe despite that, a tad late for Jupiter. We could see Jupiter a couple of minutes ago, right under the mast, the horizontal beam of this crane. But I think the increasing light has put it out of view. At this moment, Jupiter is at its closest to the Earth since 1963. That means it's only 367 million miles away. That's approximately 4 times the distance of the Sun. That means it's just in our backyard, because the stars other than the Sun are much further away. And I'm afraid that I haven't been able to catch it unless you have some scientific instrument to increase the perception of the data that I'm transmitting to you. Jupiter right now is probably at the level of the bob on that cable hanging from the arm of the crane just left of this main mast of the crane. And it's about at that height. So that's just a helpful zeroing in, but maybe the light is completely insufficient for you to see it. So that was our hope for it. If I did it 10 minutes ago, I would have seen it, and you would have seen it, but I didn't anticipate it disappearing so quickly. And that's why the other morning, in fact, if you scroll back a couple of sunrise strolls and chat, a couple of mornings ago, I did get Jupiter, and I didn't realize that it was getting that close to the Earth, and that's why it was so bright. So here we are in a darker moment, a less bright moment, but it has its own mystique and magic. And here you can see the very well lit up tower of St. Saviours Church of the Franciscans. Normally the Lutheran tower is also lit up, but the lights must have gone off with light sensors. We can see some of the mosques are lit up. Here you can see all those green ones are mosques with that green light. It's not because Muhammad was Irish, but they do like the green. I often wonder if that's because of the desert. Actually, you can see some green grass there. Isn't that amazing? In Jerusalem in September, we've no rain since last March, April at the latest. And I hadn't noticed that green grass before, but actually the light shining on it there at this moment makes it stand out. I'm not sure if it stands out so much in the intense daylight. And there's a mosque up on top of Mount of Olives, which is a very useful marker. You see the Tower of the Ascension of the Russian Orthodox monastery. We were talking about it yesterday because we had the sun perched right on top of it. And you see to the right of it, there's that green light again, typical indicator of a mosque. And that's exactly the point of entrance to the historical place of memory of the Ascension of our Lord. And the structures there are the remains of a Crusader church. And so then about 800 years ago, or more, probably maybe closer to 900 years ago. And then we can't see it very well from here, but there's also the Our Father Church is, I can see it with my eyes and I can't give it to you, I don't know why. Just hold on a second now. Maybe I need to go a little, yeah, there we are. That's the Our Father Church, the Pater Noster Church on the Mount of Olives. And just between them and behind them is Bethany, Bethphage, first of all, and Bethany. And you can see it's the first day of the week and people are off to work. We're outside the new gate of the old city. And some of our pilgrims are up here checking out, taking their shots, having their view. And so we started early this morning in the hope of getting Jupiter in Jerusalem. Actually, that's what they did. I think it was Hadrian. Was it Hadrian? Yes, dedicated a temple to Jupiter here in Jerusalem at the site of the Temple Mount, with the intent of squashing all religious identity here from the Jewish side and imposing the Roman, because of the Bar Kokhba rebellion, which was a very serious rebellion in the year 134, I think. And so those years were very turbulent and destructive. He destroyed the city completely and gave it a new name, Aelia Capitolina. And even in Middle Age maps, they are on record, and they indicate Jerusalem, Aelia Capitolina, once called Jerusalem. Can you imagine? But the powers of this world fade, sometimes very painfully, leaving a lot of blood trails and hurt and damage and wounds in memory. And poverty. And today the prophet Amos speaks out about the rich and powerful sumptuously feasting on all the choicest goods of the earth, and the poor man, as Jesus will present that same message in the Lazarus and the rich man and Lazarus, and the poor man is licking his sores, or his dogs are licking his sores, his leprosy sores. Poor Lazarus. And it's a picture that we could see painted in our world today. In so many places, it's part of humanity's great endeavors to accumulate wealth and possibilities, but also the great flaws of oppressing people and hurting and abusing and misusing. But something tells me I want to say something else about this gospel message today and Amos's words. You know, we can definitely focus on that great inequality in the world, that great suffering, that great injustice, that great lack of compassion. There's a very interesting word inside the gospel today, and it says, if they don't listen to the scriptures, Moses and the prophets, as it's named, they would not listen to a man who has been raised from the dead, who would come back, and because this is what the rich man wanted, that Abraham would send somebody back from the dead to warn the people, to warn his brothers. He had that little bit of compassion for his brothers. And if they don't listen to Moses and the prophets, they won't even listen to a man risen from the dead. And I'm saying that here as we look at the Holy Sepulchre. But the interesting thing is that many people have listened to the scriptures. And I would invite you today also to ponder that aspect in your reflection and prayer. How these scriptures have shaped culture and humanity. How many people have gone out of their way completely? Gone out of their way completely. Gone out of their way completely. No, I'm not a broken record. I'm just emphasizing. They have gone out of their way completely to help the poor. And what we have in our world today is amazing. What we have in our world today is amazing. It's extraordinary, the legacy of good done for the needy and the destitute. Just think of somebody from Albania who also spent a little time in Ireland. That must have been a big blessing for her. And she is now well known worldwide as Mother Teresa, Teresa of Calcutta. What she did for the dying and the streets of Calcutta, and what this inspiration led to. But there's so many others. I've just been with two women religious from my aunt's community, and one of them started a health desk for the Bishops' Conference in Zambia. And basically, in the time of colonialization, the only sources of healthcare were the religious orders. And so this had been growing, and to get this organized and serving more efficiently and effectively. And then they did a process called Zambianization, which was training all the local people to do this. So the whole skill set became theirs. And the culture that they did was not just a technical training, but that training of compassion, which actually sits very deeply in the human heart. Look what parents do for a sick child, for somebody who is hurting. People rush to an accident scene. Think about all the ambulances. Sometimes we hear the siren and we're worried about if our traffic will be impeded because of the siren, but there go people at all hours of day and night with compassion to serve. And what this also shows us is that civil society in developed countries have accepted this value that we have to go to the help of the needy and the hurting and care for them. And that's why it's so sad now to receive the news yesterday of the major tragedy. The last count I had, there were 77 had died in the refugee boat sinking off Syrian coast, a Lebanese refugee boat with also Palestinians from this area of the world, and Lebanese and Syrian migrants heading to Europe. And that's a huge problem. But think of all those poor people. And one of the men who died apparently had exchanged his own house in Syria to the dealers in the trafficking of the refugee flight program out of these countries, out of Syria. And so all this property he handed over to these handlers in order to be able to get on that boat. And then he and his family lost their lives. And we look at that poverty, that misery, and the need for help. But let's go back again and focus on those who did things. This is the 6:30 bell here. All the people who have done things. Think of the slave trade 400 to 500 years ago, and there was a man, Peterclavere, and he went to Colombia, and he spent 40 years going down to the docks every day to look for the new slaves coming from Africa, and many of them were very sick and they'd been beaten. And he tended their wounds and brought back life into many of them, and showed them love, showed them God's love, and cared for them. Peterclavere, Google him, Claver. And then we have another sister who was here, actually from Ireland. I know her pretty well, and she set up a beautiful charity work in Gaza for the poorest children, and healthcare for the poorest mothers and elderly. How much, think of Vincent de Paul, think of Mary's meals, think of so many thousands, probably millions of initiatives that have been inspired by these readings. Where are these sisters going? Just walking out of the new gate. I don't recognize them right now. They're going too fast. I'm focusing here and focusing in for you. And they're most probably, because this is what sisters do, they're most probably dedicated to serving somebody in great need, and they're not getting any salary. They're giving their lives. They're gone out of their way, completely dedicated to the relief of people who are suffering. Leaving our richer or poorer ivory castles of our Western developed culture and society to serve the needy, which is also at our own doorsteps. So the invitation this morning would be how beautiful it would be to join that group, that great, if you want to call it an army, that great movement of people who are emerging constantly because they're listening to the scriptures, they're listening to the call of Christ, they're listening to the cry of the poor. And now the sun is rising. And I just think about that effort of charity. It's like a rising sun that has impacted the world and brought light. Look at that sun rising there. So this teaching of the rich man and Lazarus, what a fruit it has borne. So let our hearts be filled today with thanksgiving and delight, because our world is totally different, because people have listened to this parable, to this story, have received that into their hearts. People, I want to switch over to Instagram. So as much as you want to see the sun coming up, the Instagrammers always get the later bit, because I typically do Facebook first, Facebook Live, which is later put up on YouTube. And today I tried to get Jupiter for you in Jerusalem, but we weren't able to. So now the Instagrammers get their chance. And we've done a good time here this morning. May you be blessed as you live this wonderful Sunday, beginning of a new week, first day of the week. And maybe the next time around, another 60 years, if God gives us life, we'll see Jupiter again. There comes the sun. At least we got a unique sunrise this morning if we didn't get Jupiter.